Andre Ward, Jonathan Banks, George Foreman, and several other high-profile people within the world of boxing in the United States have come forward and said that the criticism of Anthony Joshua is over the top. Ward in particular is basically said that AJ is not this hype job that people are making him out to be. And to quote Andre Ward directly, he says AJ is actually the truth. You wouldn't have done all the things that he's done, both amateur and pro, if you couldn't fight at all. So that's Andre Ward's take on it. But Andre Ward also says that there are flaws in AJ, and there have been for a long time, which he feels that he could exploit. So this is Andre Ward still talking about how he was actually serious about fighting Anthony Joshua a couple of years back. Jonathan Banks says AJ can come back just like Wladimir and Lennox came back. George Foreman, interestingly, has offered to manage Anthony Joshua. He says that AJ can come back and be better than he previously was. But interestingly, George Foreman says that if he was managing AJ, he would not have AJ take the immediate rematch with Ruiz. And to be honest with you, if I was managing him, I think I would do the same. I would not advise AJ to take the immediate rematch. And I know it sounds counterintuitive because if he doesn't take the rematch with Ruiz, Ruiz is a Heyman guy. That means Heyman's got all the belts. That means AJ has to climb up the heavyweight ladder and try and get himself into a mandatory position because he's probably not going to get a voluntary for any of those belts when Heyman fighters have got all the belts. Be that as it may, as a manager, I'd be thinking more what is best for AJ's rehabilitation and his development as a fighter in the long term. Because in the short term, the Eddie Hearns and the Sky Sports and the DAZN, they're all thinking about the money that they're going to lose not having all those belts in the camp. But AJ has made loads of money already. He's set for life. His family and his children and probably his children's children are set for life with the money that he's made. So the priority shouldn't be how do we make the most amount of money right away? Because he's already made loads of money. He's already made money he can retire on now. The priority should be how do I rehabilitate myself as a fighter, correct the mistakes that need to be, rectified, reinvent myself, learn new techniques, be under a different trainer, just enter the next stage of his pugilistic development. That should be the focus. But when you throw him right back into the deep end with Ruiz, even if he gets past him, he's going to be stuck with tough mandatory challenges and all this kind of stuff. The fights are going to be too tough for him to be transitioning into a different trainer and learning and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be too tough. AJ's somebody who was moved very quickly in his professional career. And if I was managing him, I would say at this point, it's time to pump the brakes a little bit. Pump the brakes, slow it down, change trainer, work on, modifying your style. You see, one of the reasons that Lennox Lewis was able to go on to be such a successful fighter after he got knocked out by McCall is because he did have that rehabilitation period. At the time, Frank Maloney, who was Lennox Lewis's manager and his promoter Panos Eliades, they wanted the rematch with McCall immediately. But when you look at the state Lewis was in when he rematched McCall, and that was several years later, the state as in how nervous he was, how gun-shy he was. In fact, the state Lewis was in his comeback fights after the McCall fight, when he fought Lionel Butler, he was gun-shy against a fat, overweight guy. He was gun-shy. He was afraid to throw shots. And trust me, Lionel Butler was no Andy Ruiz before anybody starts that nonsense. So yeah, Lennox had a period of rehabilitation where he wasn't just thrown right back in at the deep end. He had a new trainer in Manny Stewart. He had a fight against Lionel Butler. Then he fought Justin Fortune. And these are low-level opponents. Then he fought Tommy Morrison. And Morrison, of course, was dangerous, but Morrison wasn't the same when Lewis fought him as he was a few years ago. Not that Morrison was ever the best fighter out there, but he'd taken some beatings and, he'd lost some fights and stuff like that. And that was actually Tommy Morrison's last fight before he got diagnosed with HIV. So yeah, he beat Tommy Morrison. So Lewis had this long period where he was rebuilding. And at the time, the press said that Lewis had basically been frozen out of the heavyweight picture following his loss to McCall. And he had been frozen out. The Americans had frozen him out. But he needed that period, to be honest with you, to rehabilitate himself, to reinvent himself as a different fighter. He needed it. He'll probably look back now and tell you the same, that he actually needed that period. Even though it may have been frustrating, it was what was required. And I think for Anthony Joshua, in the long term, as his development as a fighter, he needs something similar, where you actually step down from world title level and go back to learning, rebuild. Throwing him right back in the deep end, even if he gets past Ruiz, I think it won't be long before somebody else beats him. Unless, at the very least, they need to get rid of McCracken. If he can get the hell rid of McCracken, get a new trainer in there, somebody who's had a lot more experience with heavyweights, someone who's got a lot more experience when it comes to, someone who's got a more proven track record when it comes to teaching defense. If he can get someone like that in, then there might be a possibility that even if AJ stays at world level, beats Ruiz and what have you, there might be a possibility that he'll be able to adjust on the job as a world champion and improve on the job. But it's going to be a lot tougher doing that than taking a step down and so on and so forth. But here's what it is. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him from Hearn and Sky and all that kind of business to go straight in and take the Ruiz fight. And if AJ's heart is not fully in that Ruiz fight, if it's pressure from Hearn and Sky and DAZN, you're going to see him lose again if his heart ain't fully in it. Yeah. And in fact, even if his heart is fully in it, he might still lose anyway. But yeah, the stuff that Andre Ward says about AJ not being a hype job, and if he was a hype job, he wouldn't have achieved all the stuff he already has. I agree with that. AJ's not a hype job. I think it's disrespectful to Andy Ruiz to call AJ a hype job, because the reality is Andy Ruiz now has a better win on his resume than Deontay Wilder does. How about that? That's a fact. Andy Ruiz has got a better win on his resume than anything on Deontay Wilder's record. Yeah. Now, some could say the same thing with Tyson Fury's record, but Tyson Fury, in a lot of people's eyes, beat Wilder, for one. And Tyson Fury, in a lot of people's eyes, beat a version of Klitschko who is better than the version AJ beat. And in fact, some people would say, I'm not saying I agree with this, but some people would say that the Klitschko who fought Fury probably would have beaten AJ or was better than AJ. Again, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying some people might say that. So there's an argument to be made there that Andy Ruiz doesn't have a better win on his record than Fury does. But there's no argument with regards to Andy Ruiz having a better name on his record than Wilder has. There's no question. Ruiz has got a much better name in AJ on his record than anything Deontay Wilder has on his. So give Andy Ruiz the respect. He doesn't have a hype job on his record. He doesn't have a bum on his record. He's got a very good fighter, a unified champion, a guy in his athletic prime, different than technical prime or mental prime, but athletic prime on his record. So big up Andy Ruiz for that. You get this attitude with a lot of boxing fans whereby they think there's only two kinds of boxers. There's either hype jobs or there's the real deal. There's nothing in between, which is a very short-sighted way of looking at boxing. Right? It's like I've said before, when Lennox Lewis lost to McCall, hype job. Look what he went on to achieve after that. And you calling him a hype job. Come on, it's silly. Yeah. AJ got blitzed by Andy Ruiz, got, wiped out. And again, I have to go back to this because I don't want any idiots turning up in the comments. In a previous video, I mentioned the fact that some people were saying that AJ is a hype job. And I said, maybe he is a hype job, as if it's, with a question mark at the end. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I don't know. That's what I would normally say. That's how I'd normally End the sentence. Okay? I'm not saying he's a hype job. Putting the record straight. In my opinion, it's ridiculous to call Anthony Joshua a hype job, given what he's achieved. He's not a hype job. He is a very good fighter with flaws and vulnerabilities which got exposed against Andy Ruiz. So give Andy Ruiz the credit for beating a very good fighter. Yeah, don't try and diminish Ruiz's achievement and what he's done. Give him the full credit. Yeah. So yeah, I think that what Ward is saying, very salient points. Ward also talks about AJ's attitude. He says the guy's on Instagram all the time trying to look like an Instagram model and all this kind of business. I mean, maybe I don't really check for his Instagram like that, so I don't know. But this is what Andre Ward's saying about AJ. Too much Instagram model stuff, too much fame and celebrity stuff. And it's the old story, isn't it? It's the old story of too much fame and celebrity, and you have to go back to the spit and sawdust and rediscover yourself, rediscover what got you to the top in the first place. Now, if AJ is to mount a successful comeback, and I'm not saying that he will, by the way, you know, you got all these AJ fans out there acting like it's a done deal that AJ is going to come back and mount a successful comeback. I need to see certain things put in place, and I need to see certain things change before I'll be convinced that AJ is going to mount a successful comeback. Yeah. It remains to be seen. But a defeat, a humiliating, devastating defeat, the likes of which AJ suffered against Ruiz, it can either be the making of you or the breaking of you. Now, I should have got Wladimir Klitschko's 2 defeats against Corey Sanders and Lamont Brewster up here, because they were the most similar to AJ's defeat against Ruiz. But they were the making of Klitschko, particularly the Lamont Brewster defeat. That was the making of Wladimir Klitschko. Yeah, he switched it up and he went on a tremendous run as heavyweight champion. He found out what worked for him and he stuck with it for nigh on 10 years. So that was the making of Klitschko, even though his own brother told him to retire after the Lamont Brewster fight, but he persevered. He was written off, but he persevered and he went on to become a great. So you've got instances like that. You've also got instances where people quit, like Vitaly Klitschko quitting against Chris Bird. People questioned his heart. Larry Merchant at this fight was saying, these Eastern Europeans just don't have the heart for it. Klitschko took that criticism on board, and when he went into the Lennox Lewis fight, he fought extra hard to redeem himself because he didn't like this label of a quitter that the American press had put on him. So he worked extra hard to redeem himself, and there was no way he was going to quit in the Lennox Lewis fight because he knew he had to go through the fire to regain his honor, as it were. And obviously, Vitaly went on to be a great after that fight against Bird where he quit. And then, of course, we got the most famous, or one of the most famous instances of a great fighter quitting, which was Roberto Durán in the rematch of Sugar Ray Leonard, the famous No Mas fight. Roberto Durán quit, but, you know, he went on to become a great fighter anyway. I mean, he was already a great fighter when he fought Leonard in the rematch, but he went on to become even greater after this fight. So, yeah, but on the flip side of that, you know, you've got all these great fighters who've quit and come back. On the flip side, you've got a Jeff Lacy, who going into the fight against Joe Calzaghe, he was favored. He was a brash, you know, loud, arrogant, confident, aggressive guy. Went in there against Calzaghe, was calling him Cal Slappy. And he got the beating of his life against Calzaghe, and he never recovered from it. Jeff Lacy, literally overnight, before the Calzaghe fight, Lacy was one way. After the Calzaghe fight, he was a shell of himself in subsequent performances. That one fight literally destroyed Jeff Lacy as a fighter. And I'm not saying Jeff Lacy was going to go down as an ATG if it weren't for the Calzaghe beating. No, but you cannot look at Jeff Lacy before the Calzaghe fight and then immediately after the Calzaghe fight and his subsequent performances and tell me that that's the same fighter. No, he was destroyed as a fighter in the Calzaghe fight. He couldn't come back from it. I think he'd been damaged physically. Probably his brain was damaged in some way. You know, psychologically, that he just was never the same after that Calzaghe fight. Is that what's going to happen to AJ? Is he going to be like another Jeff Lacy? Could be. I'm not discounting the possibility that AJ ends up like another Jeff Lacy, who was basically still a name, but a punching bag essentially for any top fighter he came across after this. Could AJ end up like that? Yeah, he could. It's possible. Yeah, it's possible. I don't know. There's a question mark on the end of that. I'm certainly not dismissing the possibility that he could end up as a punching bag. Certainly, you've got Tyson Fury and even Frank Warren, a lot of people. Glenn McCrory coming out suggesting that AJ's finished. He's done. That he will literally be a punching bag. Tyson Fury saying AJ's not very good and never thought he was good and that he predicted the Ruiz win. Well, Tyson Fury didn't predict Ruiz beating AJ any more than I did. Tyson Fury just said the exact same thing that I said, which was, I wouldn't be shocked if Ruiz beat AJ. Yeah, that's all he said. And in terms of Tyson Fury's prediction record for AJ fights, he picked Charles Martin to beat AJ. So, you know, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Tyson Fury definitely doesn't have the greatest track record when it comes to picking winners in AJ fights. But yeah, he said that he wouldn't be shocked if Ruiz beat AJ. Same thing as I said. All right, we said that independently. I'm sure he hadn't seen my video. I hadn't seen his comments when I made my video like a month before the fight. It was what it was. But Tyson Fury going on like AJ's garbage and he never was any good and he's a big pumped up bodybuilder and this, that, and the other. It's over the top. Does AJ have flaws? Yes. Are there many things that Tyson Fury does better than AJ? Absolutely. But to say that he's just garbage and no good at all, Tyson Fury wasn't saying that when he sparred AJ, when AJ was just an ABA champion and Tyson Fury was British champion as a pro. Tyson Fury was saying that AJ's very, very good and that he's one to watch and you need to keep your eye on him. And that's when AJ was basically a novice, amateur. And Tyson Fury was saying he's very, very good. But now that AJ's reached the level where he's one of Fury's rivals, now Fury's not so complimentary. You know, that's how it goes. When Fury's dealing with competitors, he puts them down. That's his way. You know, kind of like Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was a guy who would put his competitors down. He always wanted to retain this superiority in his own mind and in the mind of the public over his opponents. You know, that's just Tyson Fury's way. But when people buy in to the stuff that a Muhammad Ali says, a Tyson Fury, even a Deontay Wilder to some extent, when people buy into that, that's when they can get surprised by certain results. When they start buying into people who are going over the top with the stuff that they're saying. Believing, oh yeah, Tyson Fury said it, it's all true. This is a pumped up bodybuilder, a hype job. Fury's going over the top. Fury knows that, you know, AJ, Wilder, these guys are a lot more dangerous than he's making them out to be. It's just his hype talk, right? A lot of people buy into the hype talk and, oh, it's all real. No, it's hype talk. So, you know, it's just his way of getting himself mentally prepared to face any of those guys as he runs them down. But he knows they're better than he's actually making them out to be. And occasionally in interviews, Tyson Fury's, you know, alter ego mask does slip a little bit and he starts giving the Wilders and the Joshuas like more credit for how good they are, you know. But when he goes into Fury mode, Gypsy King mode, he's just trashing them and they're all rubbish and they're all bums, all hype jobs and bodybuilders and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, don't buy in too much to the hype talk that Tyson Fury comes out with when he says that kind of stuff, because it's over the top. Yeah, that's what I'll say about all this. Drop your comments in the comment section below. Let me know how you feel. Joshua was exposed. Joshua was certainly exposed. That's one thing I will 100%, million% agree with anybody who says that Joshua was exposed. But being exposed don't mean you're just totally rubbish, but he was exposed. He was exposed in terms of his punch resistance. He was exposed in terms of his back foot boxing ability to some extent. Okay, even though he got caught generally when he was trying to exchange, his back foot boxing ability, even prior to getting caught, looked dodgy. So I think he was exposed on that. He was exposed in terms of punch resistance. He was once again exposed in terms of stamina. He was exposed in terms of survival instincts, not knowing what to do. And some would say he was even exposed in terms of heart, that he quit the fight. You know, his desire wasn't there. So was AJ exposed? 1,000,000% he was exposed. But exposed is different than someone just being rubbish. You know what I mean? That's a different thing. Anyway, drop your comments below. It's happening out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.